We strive to inform and educate the viewer about virtualization technology. Today's video presentation is going to be a remake on an old video that we created in the early days of the founding of Virtualize Everything. As a side note, today, the day of filming, is the 1-year anniversary of the founding of Virtualize Everything. So, with that, the presentation about recreating an OpenVPN server in an LXC container without error messages using Proxmox 7 is going to start. So the first thing you need to do to create your LXC container to then install OpenVPN in is going to be to make your container. We can do that by clicking the Create Container up in the top corner after we've selected something inside the server we want to work with. Now, we'll give the container a name, and we need to configure our root password. Now, after clicking Next, we can select the template we want to use. We're going to use Ubuntu 21.04. Click Next. Select the storage drive. In my case, I'm going to use storage. And the size, 8 gigs will be fine. 1 CPU will be fine, but if you so choose, you can add more. We're going to leave 512 megs of RAM, but again, if you're using this server heavily or have multiple clients using this server, you may want to add more. Now, we're going to go on to networking. Most of these default settings will be fine for my setup today. This may not be the case for you if you plan on using a different network port, but I'm going to leave that configuration to yourself. The one thing we want to do here is select static and enter an IP address. At the end of the IP address that we have chosen to enter, we need to put a /24 or designate the subnet mask of our network. Now you need to enter your gateway, and you can move on to your DNS settings. Mine are default, and I can finish. This will create the container so we can begin working with it. Now that our container has been created and that process is finished, it is time to start the process of configuring our container for the use of our OpenVPN server. The process does differ that from the normal process of creating a container. So what we need to do before starting the container and beginning to install the software, we need to select our server, open the shell, and enter some commands to begin configuring the container to accept OpenVPN. The first thing we need to do is to enter a command that will allow us to begin editing our container. The command is nano etc pve lxc, the container number, in our case 101.conf. Press enter and you're going to be presented with this file. We need to add 2 lines to this configuration file. Here are the 2 lines. These lines will be provided via a link to Virtualize Everything's website at the time of release of this video. Also, you can find all commands used today at that same link. So, with these 2 commands added to our configuration file, we can then press Ctrl X, Y for yes, and enter. Now we have changed our configuration file, but it is not yet time to start our container. Now we need to assign permissions to a file in order to begin working with it. To do that, we're going to use this command, chown 100,000:100,000 space /dev/net/ton. This will stop you from getting the ton error that you commonly get when trying to configure OpenVPN inside of an unprivileged container in Proxmox without doing these configuration steps. Now we can make sure the process has taken effect and we do now have read-write privileges over this file by entering the command ls-l and then the same file address. If everything went all right, this is the output you should see. Now we can close this screen and begin working with our actual container by starting it and loading the console. Now we can enter root and our password that we use during the setup procedure for the container. As always, the first step is going to be to run an update. I also like to string together the upgrade command at the same time and add -y to it. This will auto-configure any questions to be yes. Alrighty, now that our container has been updated of repositories and upgraded for available packages, it's time to start installing OpenVPN. We're going to use a script today to make the installation and configuration of OpenVPN easier. So the first thing we need to install is OpenVPN and Git. We're going to do that with the command apt install OpenVPN -git. And we did not add the -y here, so you can see that I am presented with a command asking if I would like to continue. If I had added -y to the end of this string, we wouldn't have been presented with this question. Press Y and enter to continue. Now it's time to get the script that I spoke of for the installation and configuration of OpenVPN. We're going to use git clone and we're going to get the NYR script for OpenVPN installation. There we go. Now let's use cd to move to the root directory where the OpenVPN-install script is. Now if we run ls, you can see there are some files in here, and one of them is the .sh script that we're going to use today. I highly suggest you read through this script and make sure there is nothing in there that you disagree with. I have already done so, and I am not going to bore you with that process. But it is good practice when using scripts to do that. So now we can run bash openvpn-install.sh to begin configuring OpenVPN to be used as a server. First question is, what is my public IP address? Now we're going to configure whether we use UDP or TCP. We're going to press 1 for UDP. The port we'd like to use, we're going to use 1194. You may not want to use that because a lot of ISPs block that particular port for home VPN use. Now we want to configure our DNS server. Now I am going to use 1 here because I would like to use my Pi-hole server, but some of the other options work just as well. Enter the name of your client. Now we have created a new client for our OpenVPN. We can view this client by cding to root and doing ls. You can see the test OVPN file is here. Now you just need to move this file to your client and set up your client. I will not cover that in this video because every client, whether it's Mac, Linux, or Windows, is different for these processes. I would suggest using SCP if you're on a Mac or a Linux system for moving this file. You can also use SCP through PuTTY, but you will need to install other packages in order to do so. I hope you enjoyed today's video on configuring and setting up an open VPN server on Proxmox 7 inside of a Linux container. If you did, please consider liking, sharing, and subscribing to the Virtualize Everything YouTube channel, as well as check out their new website at virtualizeeverything.com. As always, have a good night.